So, Dakota AAZK Conference, most of us in this meeting right now are officers. Fun fact. I mean, not like most. I'd say half because that is the actual number. So, Shannon, me, I am the president. Taylor, you want to introduce yourself? We can do that. And then Riley.
My name's Taylor Gent. I work at the Roosevelt Park Zoo as an African keeper here. I joined AAZK right when it started. Shannon reached out to us and we were able to get a group of us that were interested. I only recently started as vice president this summer, I think it was, and I've been working really closely with Shannon with helping get things organized for this conference. Unfortunately, it has to be virtual, but we're still going to have fun with it in person this coming year. Shannon has a lot of good ideas and makes it exciting.
Oi. Riley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Riley. I am the treasurer of the Dakota AAZK Chapter. I also work at the Dakota Zoo with Shannon, so I get to talk about this kind of stuff a bit more often than some might. But excited to see what this AAZK conference is going to be like, even though we are all doing this from home. So it'll be pretty awesome and be a lot of good information for everybody. So thanks for coming.
Cool. And I'm gonna try and get these recordings posted somewhere. We talked about we have a YouTube channel that we can attempt using. I've also uploaded documents to Facebook before, so that is kind of another goal place for it to be. But people are gonna kind of pop in and out. People have been telling me that they're gonna only be able to come certain days of the week or whatever works really, honestly. We're all just kind of feeling it out and seeing what life is going to bring us. So also we are missing one Megan. She is our secretary. She's on a really cool adventure. She's going to go to 4 different zoos on her weekend because she's bonkers, and I hope that they have a great time. And she'll probably also be popping in and out as available. But that is that stuff. So again, a lot of us have kind of been involved in the goings on of the chapter, but just like a brief overview, we do monthly meetings. We have done traveling meetings where I was able to go sometimes with other zookeepers, sometimes not, to different members of our chapter, the facilities that are all involved in our chapter. So I was able to go to 3 or 4 different facilities around North Dakota, and as we get more interest and we kind of broaden our horizons and go into different areas, I'm hoping that we continue that because I thought that that was really valuable for me. At some point down the line, we're going to talk about some benefits and some kind of incentives in our chapter, and being able for you to do traveling meetings is something that I kind of wanted to throw around as an idea, just so that if you wanted to be able to go to a different facility, maybe having them post you like for the weekend and you can see some behind the scenes, or if you have specific training you wanted to do, I would really, obviously COVID abiding by that, we're just put a blanket statement over everything. COVID, we're being COVID safe. Okay, so we also were able to do a sister fundraiser with Roosevelt Park Zoo on Tiger Day, and we raised $425 for the Tiger Conservation Campaign. We raised a little over $300 for our own chapter. And then Taylor, our vice president, also did a bake sale that was at Zubu last year, I think, something like that. And she raised a bunch of money too. I don't remember how much it was off the top of my head, but she's great and we appreciate her. So we have had a conference previously that was obviously in person. It was 2 days. We're hoping to extend it into a 3-day this year. Obviously unable to do that as of now, but like Taylor said, we're planning to keep it basically as it was, just later at a later date. So stay tuned. And then just some examples of meeting topics that we have done before, so that you kind of get an idea. Some different conservation projects, local conservation projects, as well as the Kristen Project. We have had neonate preparation and rearing. So just at the beginning, we were talking about, I reached out to a friend of mine who had a callitrichid or cotton top tamarin rearing protocol. So basically as the parents are rearing, and then also if people had to intervene and hand rear the baby, there is information on all of those things. And that is like a very, very tiny detail of zookeeping. And so being able to kind of reach out to this extent, that's why we kind of created a chapter like this, was to be able to connect with people who have done it before. And so things like rearing and neonate care, really detailed things, are what we really kind of are most interested in, I feel like, in the chapter. Using training to improve welfare was an example, and then wolf husbandry was basically just Red River Zoo. Gave us kind of the lowdown on how they take care of their wolves. They have a really cool setup there. They do a lot of carcass feeds and a lot of like big, they're like a pack. I mean, honestly, that's what wolves do. So they have a really cool setup, and were able to show us about that. So if you feel like your facility has a particular thing that you excel at and you want to highlight that at a meeting, and you can get together as a group and do a presentation if you'd like to, or do one yourself. But we're all really interested in how zoos do different things. That was one thing that I honestly thought was most interesting about my traveling meetings, is I was able to see kind of a little bit of the husbandry behind all of these animals. And a topic that we were going to talk about at this conference was called Cleanliness is Next to Godliness. And it's basically just like how each facility takes care of, let's say, a bobcat. And so we look at like, maybe what does this zoo do? What does this zoo do? But it's all anonymous. So we can just kind of look at like how the care is different, and maybe see some tips and tricks on taking care of specific species if they've done it a really long time. Red River is really excelling, I believe, at their Palace Kitten program. And so we have based a lot of our rearing stuff off of them. It's really, they're quite successful with that. We're really excited to be able to follow them and hopefully be successful as well. And so by being able to talk about all of these things together, answer questions, ask questions, we're going to be able to be better as keepers and just keep growing our facilities. We're all in small places, and we always have a place to go up. So we're just going to keep doing that. So just kind of a touch on dues and what they're for. So again, this is going to be shared after it is recorded. However, I am going to put in a stipulation there. Currently, dues are $50. They're going to be $50 per year. And I'm trying to figure out, as far as pricing goes, what exactly we want to do, because I think originally, first off, we have a lot of new members. Most of the people who voted for that are not really as involved, or not in the state, or just have gone since then because we voted on that so long ago. And so I would be interested in getting some feedback from you guys. So there's going to be some surveys coming out on our Facebook page, and one of them has a question on dues, and it's just a blank question. So it's basically like, what do you think it would be reasonable for dues? And it gives you some examples of what our chapter does, to kind of be like, hey, I understand that you are putting up some funds. However, our chapter is really trying to move each of us forward. We're really trying to connect. And so I wanted to explain maybe what dues do here as well. So funding our conferences, when we had the in-person conference, we had workshops. We had like food that was funded. Obviously, if there are people who needed housing, we were going to do that this year. Funding resources for members. So that was something I was gonna kind of touch on later too. But if anybody's really interested in doing something research related or doing something enrichment related, and you're having issues with funding, our chapter, as we're getting more members and we are doing more events, we could talk about like assisting in funding resources for specific members of our chapter. And then obviously fundraisers, prepping and planning, dues are just kind of a blanket thing wherever money needs to be. But really those are our kind of biggest expenses right now. And the conference, I think, is one of the coolest things about our chapter. I have seen a few different chapters and I haven't really seen a conference held annually by a group like this. Maybe it was like one facility and they kind of held an event at their own facility, but it wasn't a bunch of different ones. And that's what we're really hoping to do with this chapter. So having the dues to be able to bring us closer, I think having it in person would allow us a lot more connection. I feel like, unfortunately, obviously we're not able to do that, but going down the line, moving forward, having that conference, I feel like was how I was able to really put a name to a face and kind of meet everyone and see what everyone's about, what everyone's interested in, and really be able to tailor what our chapter is to our members. So funding for the conference is a really big one. It's really, really important. So.
And then to interject on that, I remember previously you were saying, Shannon, funding as well for being able to go to something like the National AAZK Conference, which is really good as far as, like you were saying, making connections, getting to be able to hear different perspectives from different facilities, because, you know, we're all in the North Dakota region. We're aware of what goes on here and how we are able to deal with things seasonally, but it might be something different. You might hear from someone in Florida or Texas or Georgia or something like that. But it's another thing that dues are able to assist with if we have anyone available or interested in doing that.
Thank you. So the last thing is committees. We've talked about this before, but basically just like since the beginning of all of this COVID stuff, member participation has been, it's kind of flatlined as to really be expected. I'll be 100% honest, but I am hoping to get that moving forward. I hope that this conference is able to kind of bring us together a little bit because we're going to be having some events in the next few months. Also, things like voting, for example, are going to be coming up. So if we're able to kind of get together as a chapter and come up with some answers and maybe get some more people on board, we can keep moving our chapter forward, because we've done, I think, a really good job this year, even with having, honestly, we have like all of our officer positions filled. It's just been kind of cuckoo bananas because, I mean, let's say the word of the evening is COVID, it's fine. But if we were able to have committees, so our fundraising committee, we have talked about having one member from each facility that is involved with our chapter. So basically that we have a spokesperson or just someone to contact from each facility, especially if we're going to have a fundraising event, we're going to need to contact somebody. And we could have chair positions for the fundraising committee, or one chair position if we had enough basically interest for it, but they would be the donation, coordination, and assisting in planning. Overall fundraising is kind of spearheaded by Taylor. That was the original idea. VP was kind of to take that on. We've certainly taken that on together, but I think that she has done a really, really good job with that, with doing her own bake sale. She's done some really awesome planning with me as well. So I think that that chair position would mostly just coordinate with Taylor for that reason. And then the conference committee is something, again, obviously when we're doing it online, we don't really need a committee for it. We got a handle. It's wonderful and fabulous, maybe, hopefully. But moving forward, having in-person conference committee would be delightful, because it is quite an undertaking, but also if we have more hands, we're going to be able to make it better. We're going to be able to make it a little bit more involved, maybe longer. All of the things that people want of a conference, we could be able to do if we just have the right number of hands. So that is mostly about that. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about some building blocks for our AAZK chapter, and that those are the things that I have. Haha. We can take a little bit of a snack break if need be. We're going to transition into Taylor's working with different personalities. However, between each topic, basically, I'm going to start and stop the recording. It shouldn't really affect what you guys are doing very much. It'll just make uploading the videos easier because they're going to be smaller. And then also, if you're watching them, you don't have to watch like an hour plus. You can just watch the bits and pieces that you want. So I'm going to do that now.
This conference will now be recorded.
So my name is Taylor Junt, and I work at Roosevelt Park Zoo in Minot, and I'm an African keeper here. I'm going to be talking about working with different personalities. So to start with our outline, I have defining personality and then differing between traits and types, and then some unconventional methods of uncovering personality types. And then we're going to explore the 16 personalities theory and then the types that fall under that, as well as DISC, which is D-I-S-C. And then we're going to talk about the history and development, breakdown and attributes, and then we're going to compare those to the 16 personalities in DISC, and then working with different personalities. So to define personalities, some people use categories, some people use traits, and we'll kind of talk about that, the difference between those two a little bit later as well. But it can be lots of different things that people like to say for what makes your personality. So likes, dislikes, and then many other theories. We can also look into nature versus nurture. So for nature, it's how you're originally made or how you were in utero, say how you are through your DNA, your genetics. Or nurture is how you're influenced by your environment, including experiences, relationships, the climate you grew up in, the country you grew up in, the culture, etc. So for traits versus types, for a trait, we have that ambivert is moderately extroverted or moderately introverted, and it doesn't really give you a real exact answer. It's more of like, this is what it is based on a continuum or a spectrum. You can kind of be over here or over there. You're not exactly this. Whereas a type is more of that exact category. You're exactly this. So you're an extrovert, you're an introvert. You're nothing in between like an ambivert. And that just makes it a little bit easier for us as humans to understand what category you would fall in versus just the spectrum. So some quick ways to predict your personalities could be the Zodiac, lion, otter, golden retriever, beaver, so like an animal personality, and then also the Hogwarts houses. So for Zodiac, that's defined by your birth date and then where the planets and the stars were all at your time of birth. So it differs even between the years because the planets and everything are always continuously rotating and changing throughout the years. We have all of our birth dates here on the right-hand side, you can see. Most people usually know what they are, at least their sun sign, but you can also get very technical with it and have like a moon sign and a rising sign and all kinds of stuff. Some people are crepuscular too, which means that they fall in between multiple signs, so they're kind of a little bit of both. They're not exactly one or the other. Let's see, we also have the different signs and what category they fall under. So as you can see, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn are all Earth, so they can all be categorized as grounded, steady, practical. Water is emotional, mysterious, dreamers. Fire is passionate, dynamic, temperamental. Air is action, ideas, motion. So this is a very quick categorization of all of them, but you can really dive into everyone individually. So for me, I'm a Virgo. I could go into who I should, or what the stars say who I should marry, or who I'd have a good relationship with, who would be a good work relationship with, that kind of stuff. It goes very deep. So we're just doing a very quick recap of everything. Most people are pretty familiar with Harry Potter and the Sorting Hat. So you can take a test online. I have the link for that for Pottermore, where you can go on and see what house you would fall under. The most famous ones are like Ron, Hermione, and Harry. They're all under Gryffindor, but there's still plenty of people from some of the other houses. Slytherin is usually thought of as antagonist, but they don't have to be. It's not bad to be a Slytherin. And then we have a saying from Dumbledore, which will kind of play into later what we're talking about, depending on what personality you're looking at. It's that your choices can show what you truly are far more than your abilities. So with the Sorting Hat, it talks about how it's going to sort you into a house based on your abilities, but they also take in that person's choice as well. And that's a famous part in Harry Potter, I guess, when Harry sits down and he says, not Slytherin, not Slytherin. He's basically happy with any other house besides that. And so the hat takes that into account because he was thinking about possibly sorting him into Slytherin. So I have a quick way to determine your Hogwarts house. What would you do when you approached a locked door? So think about that for just a minute, because I'll have some answers, and that's I don't know. I think it's a pretty good way to sort how you are into a home versus taking the whole test. My sister and I and our parents all did it, and we were all exactly what we would normally test into. So if you have your answer, I'll hit the response. So if you're going to try and find a key to get into this locked door, you most likely would be Ravenclaw. If you're going to try to pick the lock, you're most likely going to be Slytherin. If you kick down the door, you would be Gryffindor, and then if you just simply knocked, you'd be Hufflepuff, and that's me. I thought of, I just knocked to see if someone would open it for me. Okay, and now we have an animal personalities, which is lion, otter, golden retriever, beaver. These are what you can be categorized into. And this test is another like 5-minute test, and you use words that you most associate yourself with, and you put it on a scale of like 1 through 4. So 1 being the one you most relate to, 4 being the one you least relate to out of these words. And then you can be a mix of all the personalities, but your 2 highest or 1 highest would be your most dominant, and then 2nd highest would be subdominant. And that just helps you tell your best strengths and weaknesses. So lions are leaders. They love to solve problems. They're very confident, self-reliant. Golden retrievers are loyal. They love to please. They're empathetic, very easygoing. Otters are cheerleaders. They love to talk. They're optimistic, fun-seeking. Beavers are rule followers. They love to do things correctly, analytical, and they're detail-oriented, which again, I'm a beaver. And again, that's a really easy, quick test to do. And I thought it'd be fun since we're all zookeepers and we know about animals. So now I'm going to talk about 16 personalities, that theory. So it's based off of Jung, which is Carl Gustav Jung, and he really talks about the difference between introversion and extroversion, which a lot of people are usually familiar with. Introversions being more reserved, quiet, you get your battery depleted by being around people and high stress environments or loud environments, whereas extroversion is the opposite. You're very social, you like to be around loud noises or people and doing things that recharges your battery as you're with people. And then Jung also talks about the cognitive functions of judging and perceiving, and he says that each person favors one over the other. And then 16 Personalities is also based on Catherine Briggs and her daughter, which is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And they produced 4-letter acronyms, which we'll see once we get into the 16 personalities. So this is their model, but once we get into the 16 personalities, it's changed slightly. So they have a little bit different letter system, and they also have different names for some of these types. So here are their different names and letters on the right-hand side, and they also categorize them into 4 different categories, and then we'll talk about that a little bit later too, exactly what each category means, and that's just a faster way or more simple way to say all these people are similar in this way, and then you can dive even deeper in and say they're still different in these ways too. So like I said, they use an acronym plus an additional letter. So they have the -A/T, and that's the assertive versus turbulent. And we'll talk about that later too. So they added that onto what they had started with from Jung. And then they've also used a little bit from the Big Five personalities, and they've kind of made their own thing, the 16 personalities. They just have a couple of different theories that they've reworked to make their own specific personality test. So for the Big Five, that started out with in 1961 with Ernest and Raymond, and they developed this kind of in their own standards. I didn't find a whole lot of information about their exact dealings with it. It was more of just an theory that they came up with, I guess, and then it was further developed in the 1980s by J.M. Digman and Louis Goldberg, and that's more similar to what we study today. They said that genetics and environment can impact both the psyches and the difference between twins. So they're saying, similar to what we were talking about earlier with the nature versus nurture, they can both affect who you are as a person. And they can make the difference between twins who you would think would at least have the same genetics, but not always if they're fraternal too. So that's pretty interesting. And then studies show that the C, E, O, and N do not fluctuate as a person develops and ages. So really, it's only the A for agreeableness, you'll see over on the right-hand side, that can change as you age. Everything else is more set in stone. And this isn't a method to predict behavior, but more of a way to guide you and interpret it so you understand it better. And then, so I have ocean written out here on the right-hand side. It can be that or canoe, but it's the same thing. It's O for openness, C for conscientiousness, E for extroversion, A for agreeableness, and then N for neuroticism. And both of these, or all of these, can have positives and negatives, and that kind of differs on the person and how they're made up. So for the Myers-Briggs, they dug more into the introversion versus extroversion, sensing and intuition, thinking and feeling, and judging versus perceiving, and that's how we'll really get into the 16 personalities. They base their number or their letters off of these different feelings or words, I suppose. And then we'll talk about mind, energy, nature, tactics, and identity. And then each of these aspects should be seen as a two-sided continuum with the neutral option placed in the middle. The percentages you would have seen after completing the test are meant to show which category you fall under and how strong your preferences are. So when we get to mind, it'll show you that it has actual numbers for how much you're in the mind category, how much you're in the energy category, etc. So for mind, it says introverts prefer limited social interaction, which I kind of talked about earlier, and then extroverts prefer the social interaction. And then for energy, we have the second aspect determines how we see the world and process information. So you can be either observant or intuitive, and that's where they get those letters. That's why the S is highlighted in the N. And for observant, that you're highly practical, pragmatic, and down to earth. And then intuitive is more imaginative, open-minded, and curious. Then we also have nature, which this determines how we make decisions and cope with emotions. Thinking does not focus on the emotions and use logic more often in settings to be efficient. Feeling, express their emotions, and focus on cooperation. And then we'll go into tactics, which reflects our approach to work, planning, and decision making. Judging comes from organization, predictability, planning, and structure, and prospecting are more spontaneous and flexible and good at improvising. So you can see a lot of these are kind of opposites of each other, and it just sees what you fall under most. And like I said, we'll get to the percentages with that, and so you can kind of be back and forth, but it'll still give you a definite, you're this letter versus you're not this letter. And then for identity, this is that A and T that we had that was added on from the Myers-Briggs. And that's for the assertive and turbulent, and that's how confident you are in your abilities or decisions. So assertive means you're self-assured, even-tempered, resistant to stress. They don't worry too much. They don't push themselves too hard. Turbulent are individuals that are self-conscious and sensitive to stress. They're likely to experience a range of emotions, to be success-driven, perfectionist, and eager to improve. So that's a lot of information. So when I was making this, I made a little chart to kind of keep it more organized, and it helped me understand it a little bit better. So up at the top, you can see this is all the information we just went over. It's nothing new. We have our I or E, S or N, T or F, J or P. You would just take this test and it would tell you if you're one of these letters, and that's how you get your 4-letter acronym. And then you would also get that T or A for the turbulent or assertive with it. And then that's this again. So it's a little bit more in depth from what we just went over, but you'll have this T or A to say you're either turbulent or assertive, and this will differ a person that's in the same category even further. So it's just another way to really get down to the nitty-gritty of what a person's personality is. So I am ISTJ-T, but there can still be this other person that's ISTJ-A. So we're still similar, but that's the difference is our confidence levels and our abilities and our decisions, and we're still just a tiny bit different even with that. So for the turbulent, that's self-doubters, perfectionists, can be pessimistic, pays close attention to important details, uses stress as a motivator. Assertive has resistance to stress, does not worry about the past or the future, can be overconfident, may miss important details which can hinder their success, and are satisfied with their lives. At least more so than turbulent are. And then here we have our 16 personalities categories. We have our analysts, diplomats, sentinels, and explorers. And then this is just a way to kind of group yourself again. It's similar to for the Zodiacs, where we had our earth, air, fire, water, that kind of stuff. It's just a different way to group them together and get a general idea versus very specific ideas. So I'm sentinel, so I'd be in the observant and judging. Okay, and then this is my exact personality type. These personality types are meant to serve as a guide and promote self-growth. They're not exact and can differ even within people of the same personality category. So just because someone's the same ISTJ-T, they're not going to be the same exact person as me. Everything is still going to be different. It's just a really good way to get an idea of how someone is in their personality. So like I said, I'm a ISTJ-T. My role is Sentinel. Strategy is constant improvement. And then here is our mind, energy, nature, tactics, identity, percentages, and that just tells you out of 100% where you fall on that scale. And then for constant improvement, that's my strategy. So you can see I fall under that I blank 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 dash T, and that's the introverted and turbulent. And so this is just another specific categorization of myself. It says constant improvers are quiet, individualistic people. They tend to be perfectionistic and success driven, and they just go into a whole bunch of detail about that. And this is just the free version too. So now we'll start talking about DISC history and development. So this was originally started in 1928 with William Moulton Marston, a psychologist, and he founded the 4 types of people, which he has D is dominant, I inducement, S submission, and C compliance. Similar to some of our other theories, they've been reworked, adapted, and changed based on other people developing them more. So we have 1956 Walter Clark, who was also a psychologist, and he developed a way to assess the characteristics that Marston had classified. And then throughout the decades, it's been updated and modified and formatted to work as an online module, and that's what I'll kind of be discussing today. DISC helps groups of people work together cohesively, knowing that conflict can be productive and worked through to complete a task or to better efficiently work as a team, despite differences in personalities. So we have our curator here, Brandy, who has gone to a DISC workshop and has a full-on workbook and all this kind of stuff that she was really able to get into the details of everything of DISC. I just have the free version here, but I do have the link, I guess, to get to you can pay for this to get to the specific details and really to tackle your team or your zoo. but we'll just go with this for right now. As you can see too, with time, the words changed a little bit. So now we have dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance versus the inducement and submission. And this is how it's broken up and often presented is this disc model, which is a circular diagram, I guess you could say. And it's behavioral style model. And the breakdown, D is for that dominant or direct, and it's for people that are outgoing or task oriented. They focus on results, problem solving, and the bottom line. I is for people that are also outgoing and people oriented. And that's the difference there between that and the D. And then they're more inspiring and interactive. They usually focus on interacting with people, having fun, creating excitement. S is for people who are both reserved and people oriented. And their traits often exhibit supportive and steady behaviors. They focus on relationships and maintaining peace. C is for people who have both reserved and task-oriented traits, often exhibit cautious and careful behaviors. They usually focus on facts, rules, correctness. So people can be strictly D or strictly S or whatever, but they can also be a mix. So for me, I'm a mix of the S and the C, and when I took the assessment, basically it said, you answered enough of both of these that we can't really choose just one for you to categorize you, so I'm a S/C. And then for the attributes of DISC, again, this is just like a little recap of some of the stuff we went over. It makes it a little more condensed and easier to read. You have the dominance, influence, steadiness, conscientiousness, and then this divides it up too with if you're task focused or people focused. And so like I said, for my personality, I was the C/S or S/C, and a supportive and cautious, or steadiness and conscientiousness. And then I'm careful, helpful, concerned, considerate. And then I have both the people-oriented and task-oriented traits. Like I said earlier, the different letters can have you differ between the two, but I have one of each. I'm both outgoing and reserved. I probably enjoy doing things carefully using a pattern or process. I prefer things orderly, logical. It's likely that I do not like conflict and will work hard to avoid conflict situations, and that's true. Okay, and then now we'll compare DISC versus the Myers-Briggs. So for DISC, it's more easily remembered and explained versus with the DISC, the Myers-Briggs is more complicated because we have the IE, the NS, the TF, the JP, all of these different combinations, plus the addition of that lowercase a and t for the extras. For DISC, we also only look at managing energy, which is the EI, and then making decisions, which is the TF. Myers-Briggs explains more components of that with the SN and the JP, in addition just to the EI and TF. And then DISC is more focused on behavior, and Myers-Briggs dives deeper into who we are as a person. A lot with our judging and everything like that, like it said for the JP. Okay, and then we have our continued change or comparison of these two. So I found both free versions and paid versions for both of them. I only did the free versions. For 16 personalities, even with the free version, I think you could do a lot. I know that if you paid, you got I think for me specifically, it was a 245 page document that I could get, but they already give you so many articles and different ways to learn about yourself, but then also working with different personalities, even online. So I really recommend it. I think it's really cool, but it's not super expensive. If you do the premium, it's still like under $100. And then from everything that I found for them, it was still online. I didn't really find anything as far as like extras that you would have. Whereas like with the DISC, I have this training workbook that Brandy had used. I also got some paperwork with it, as well as a different presentation that she was able to attend and write notes in and everything, and learn more and work with other people and really get to do the hands-on with it versus just sitting and studying by yourself. And that too was also under $100 for it. And you could decide if you wanted to do the full assessment, the workbook, a debriefing. So you would talk to with a professional, and they would actually like break down everything for you. With the disc too, the presentation that Brandy went to was more for leaders as well. So it was her bringing this back to our zoo and then being able to teach us how to use it, how we best work with each other, giving us the materials and tools on how to test ourselves. And it was a lot more, I guess, for a team versus individual, where the 16 personalities could be either, but you'd have to do a little more digging on your own, whereas the disc, it's kind of all given to you. So for working with others, we have the knowing your strengths. For extroverts and introverts, E is ready to jump in and start, while I likes to take a minute to think about the situation. Intuitive and observant, I are innovative and think outside the box, while O are doers and make dreams into realities. Feeling and thinking, T is a stark, this is how we do it, or this is how it is, while F incorporates someone's opinion on the situation, how they're feeling, what their opinions are about that. Prospecting and judging, J relies on security and predictability, while P likes the freedom and spontaneity. So that's more of the Myers-Briggs, how you would work with each other, where this is on the right-hand side, more of the disc, how you can approach each other, knowing your personality and their personality. So again, as a team thing, there's the disc wheel, which I found in this disc workbook, and you have the circle that I showed a little bit earlier with all of the different quadrants with the different letters that are put together, if that makes sense. And that goes from D through C, and then you'll write down everyone's initials, where they fall in those quadrants. So if they're strictly a D, they'd be in that D, but like for me, I said I'm a SC, so I would kind of fall in between both of those. You write down everyone's initials on your team, and then from there you kind of see where everyone falls, and it's a good visual way to understand everyone's differences and the way that they think about things and they react to things. So for D, when you approach them, you'd want to be clear, specific, brief, and to the point. You don't really want to incorporate any emotions or anything like that. But then for I, you want to be warm and friendly, ask them how they're doing, let them talk, let them respond to you. For S, you want to be soft and non-threatening, ask for their opinions. And then for C, be accurate and realistic, and then stay away from the emotions and feelings as well. And then it gets even more complicated when you see some different visuals, and you can see that D and I are similar in some ways, but then D and C are similar in some ways, and then C and S are similar in some ways, and then I and S are similar in some ways. So it gets complex very quickly, but it's usually easier to sit and think about the D, I, S, C versus all the different acronyms that you can have for the Myers-Briggs or 16 personalities. So ultimately, you want to learn more about yourself and your relationships with others, and you'll help each other better communicate, which can lead to more success as a person and institution. And then how you decide to go about this is entirely your choice. There's no one that's better than the other. It's more of what does your team need, or what do you personally need? What do you think you like better? What would be easier for you to work with? They both have their pros and their cons, and it just kind of whatever fits best for you. And then these are the personality quizzes that I did for the beginning, with the really quick, fun, easy ones. But I also have the 16 personalities in the disc, and those are both of the free versions that you can get on there. And then if you go onto those websites, like I said, you can do a little bit of digging, but I also have the links for those as well, where you want to, if you want to pay for it and get more information on that. And then I just have my pages of sources. And apparently I'm done at a half hour when I thought it was going to be a lot longer. So if anyone has questions, please ask. And I only know so much. I really, this is me scraping the surface of all of it. It's really in depth and it's really complicated, but it's kind of fun, I think. So yeah.
If nobody has any questions, I know you and I talked about doing kind of like a almost round table type of situation. So If anybody has a particular situation, then we can use that. But basically, I went to the AAZK conference, 2018, the National AAZK conference, and we had kind of a problem-solving little blurb. And it was like most of this talk was done by animal keepers. It was about like the care of the animals. And then this problem-solving was actually a manager. She was like the area's manager. It's not a curator position of their facility, but essentially something along those lines as well. And so she's just like, I have had to deal with so much problem solving, like dealing with different personalities while problem solving is really difficult. And so she was kind of, she asked us all to come up with one thing that we struggled with, and a lot of us, so this is a primate specific group, and we all said shifting. Like every single person said shifting. There were quite a few other things as well, but if anybody has a particular situation, if you want to like share it or write it in the chat box, we could kind of do something similar. But I kind of just wanted to present this concept to you. Basically, they had us all submit situations that were difficult that we needed to problem solve. And then we chose one topic, and then all of us wrote down our answer by ourselves as to how we would solve that problem. And the biggest thing was just to express like how many different ways there are to solve the problem. And so the one that we had been given was that the primates in question where they had a new keeper who was in a wheelchair, and the primates were afraid of the wheelchair. And so he couldn't get them to shift in with him. He couldn't get them close to him like he was supposed to work in this section that he couldn't even get these animals to. And so basically all of us had to come up with how you would solve that problem. So right now, if you want to go into the little chat box, I think that everyone can kind of just think about how they would solve the problem. So if you just joined in, quick recap, everybody's going to write their answer as to how they would get a group of primates who are uncomfortable with their keeper who is in a wheelchair. They're uncomfortable with the wheelchair. How are you going to get those primates to work with this keeper? What's your first step? If you have multiple steps, go for it. But if you want to like think on that, we'll maybe take like 5 minutes. That way, if anybody wants to get like a snack or you're doing your life things, you're eating or doing your dishes, you can put your dishes away, Riley. I know you're eating.
Much appreciated, yes. Well, I'm not done with that. Now I'm listening and doing other things,
Yes.
eating snacks. About to feed a cat, so I'm going to mute again because she gets very loud.
You're funny. Lily does the same thing. Lily-loo. Boo-boo-boo. I'm gonna see if I can make myself a presenter again real quick. Oh, so is this it? Yeah, this is our original conference itinerary, just so you can kind of get an idea to the scale that we were going to. Bloop, bloop, bloop. So we are looking forward to when we do an in-person conference. Ryan Peterson does a really cool frog watch, where he incorporates the public quite a bit and like gets them excited, and it's more of an interactive class. So we are looking forward to doing that moving forward. And obviously they have quite a bit of stock, so we're going to emphasize that once we are able to have a conference there. We have a really cool icebreaker idea that might be used elsewhere, but you guys will be hearing about it / seeing about it coming up. And then another thing with the survey that's going to be coming out, there was one question about the dues, like I mentioned, but then there's going to be questions about fundraising coming up, and giving your suggestions, not only on what the actual event is, because honestly, things are going to be a little bit more long-term as far as that goes. We have some money right now to give to a conservation organization, and I think that it would be kind of cool if we could get a few more options and then have that be something that we vote on in November as well. So we're kind of tallying up a bunch of different things to vote on in November, one being officer positions, if there are any other candidates. Not that we have any particular open positions. I would think all of these guys are running for their same, unless somebody else is running against them, but we will have topics to vote on. And if we have committee members, if we have anybody interested in joining our committee's fundraising committee, or the whatever it's called, conference committee, what we're doing right now. I got Cassie's response, so I'm gonna read it. My first step would be to place an empty wheelchair close enough for them to see it but not physically interact with it. From there, make small approximations to make it positive. And then once it's been accomplished, bring the keeper in their chair to the animals. Riley says make a wheelchair a positive thing, possibly get a donated or old one at the zoo to use as an enrichment item, maybe one piece or wheelchair part, foot pedals at a time until they're used to each piece, intro with food. I know if anybody else wants to throw more out there, but when we were there, we kind of had 4 responses. I can't remember, we had something like 30 people in this, and I think it's really interesting to hear about this disc concept, because I hadn't really heard of that too much before, and 100% honesty, I did not write down what it actually stands for. Let me get this back onto my thing here. I can't remember quite what it stands for, but we had like 4 exact answers essentially, and one was basically what Cassie said. It was kind of just like take it in steps, ease them into it. One person said give them a wheelchair, kind of like Riley said, just like have one be donated. One person said just like that person needs to just build up their relationship with them and just come in day after day. And then the one that I thought of, what I was thinking in my brain, was just putting up a visual barrier. So if they can't really see the wheelchair itself, they can see the keeper because they're not an overhead. We also talked about this a little bit more in depth. We had to kind of know the situation as far as shifting goes. A lot of our shifting is kind of up. And he said that their shifting was more through a chute. And so the biggest issue was that his chair was like right near where the shift door was. And so I was just like, well, if you put up plexi like right there, they'll come in. And then obviously at that point you're dealing with something else if you have to put it elsewhere. But the biggest concept was the shifting and then blocking it visually. And before coming to the conference, I was one of like 5 people who gave that as an answer. and they had not even, that was not something that they had thought of. Somebody at their facility said they wanted to get one of the ones that the zoo uses for its guests and have it be donated, and mush up bananas and pour the mushed bananas all over the wheelchair. That was funny. Two-pronged approach, try to desensitize primates by exposing them in a novel way with food and toys, so covered in mushed bananas. Also make an effort to associate the keeper with things primates enjoy. Yeah. So building that relationship, as well as getting them used to it. And so that was just a particular situation that I thought was kind of an interesting one. I think something else that's not as animal, a lot of times when you're problem solving and you're trying to figure out what animals are doing, you kind of have to put that into play. But let's say in our otter exhibit at the zoo, there's not really a place for us to keep water. We don't have a heated water dish. Even if we did, there's not really an outlet that would reach. If we put in a big dish, they're otters and they swim in it or they flip it. In the winter when there's ice, we can't really fill their pond. We could fill it just so much so that they had water on exhibit, but then if it freezes, it'll just keep going and going and going. And so if anybody wants to problem solve with us, but I think that what Taylor was doing was showing us what these different personality tests yield, like what it actually shows. And one thing to keep in consideration is how people use that. So for example, mine was literally like blocking the problem. When you did like, I think the Harry Potter quizzes, when the door thing, I was like, find a key. And it was like exactly Ravenclaw is what I've gotten in the past. So the first things that we have tried to do in Otter is a non-flip dish. They flipped it. So that's a great. We had a short, big water dish. We had a big water dish. We flipped all of those. I feel like we could do an extension cord to an outlet, but then putting that into an otter exhibit, that's just no good. If anybody else has had similar situations, I like a tank.
Is there any way you could get a bowl that you were somehow able to permanently mount or something to the ground so they couldn't flip it, but it's not the same as a pool where it's like the concrete or whatever you have for the exhibit? But the thing is, or maybe if there was a way you could attach it that you have to have some kind of clip or something on it so you could unattach it to dump it out so it doesn't freeze overnight or whatever you needed to, or refill it, clean it, change it out, and then clip it back in so it's stationary so they can't move it.
I feel like that's a good idea. I don't know exactly how we would do it. I'm gonna write that down.
I don't have any ideas for that. I just have that idea.
Yeah, no, I like it. And like for just as other examples of problem solving, and maybe overkill on problem solving, is we have spider monkeys that would flip their water dish every 2 seconds. Then as soon as you're done cleaning, essentially, you would leave and there would be a spilled water dish on the ground. And so they started using a water bottle, and then the adults use that really well, but I was a little bit concerned about our little baby girl growing up only knowing how to drink from a water bottle. And so now they have the dish that they flip, they have a bucket of water that hangs on the side, and they have a water bottle. So that is a little bit of overboard on that. I wonder if that's like a particular personality, if there's one that's just like, do every possible thing that you can do.
Well, there's that one that's imaginative, so it could be something like that where you just come up with all kinds of ideas and let's just try them all and see. Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Please go on here. And this. Awfully. I get both things. Oh. So let's just do a little bit of highlighting. So AAZK prints out animal keepers forms, and they will publish them once a month. And it kind of really just depends on what's going on in the world as to what they're publishing. There for a while they were doing, as birds were migrating, they had one, like, what is this called? It's not an episode, it's a journal. Volume? Okay, whatever. One volume. It was just on migrating birds. And so they do kind of features like that. I feel like they had one for Tiger Day a few years ago, because Tiger Day gets a lot of attention, as you might have seen, because we gave it a lot of attention. But I try and do a highlight of an article in one of these animal keeper forums most of our meetings. And so one that I thought was actually really interesting. So one, Ryan, who I'm with, has a remarkable relationship with our trumpeter swan. It's hilarious. Our swan will like sprint across the freaking zoo and like chase him in the cart. Like this swan really, really likes him. And so there was an article about trumpeter swans. You never see articles about trumpeter swans. So of course I had to read that one. So it says still threatened trumpeter swans and the lead crisis. So basically, trumpeter swans apparently a while ago, they were like, okay, well, we're not finding that many of them. We're going to put them on the endangered list. And then Alaska joins the United States, and everyone's like, we found a ton of trumpeter swans. Like, nobody even has to worry. We're going to take them off the list. No one's even going to care. It'll be fine. And so obviously the ones that were in the continental United States, their numbers were dwindling and getting less. So their like biodiversity is going down, and it's causing issues with these particular swans. And so I think that this is a map of all of the swans. Ooh, technology. So you can see these highlighted areas. Most of them still up in like Canada and Alaska. But the ones that still remain in the United States are, obviously they have to live around water. Whoa, I got out of focus. That was bonkers. Obviously they have to live around water, and all of our byproducts end up in water of some sort. And typically trumpeter swans are going to hang around in similar areas to where like ducks hang around, and geese, where people would be hunting ducks and geese. And so wetlands are really big areas for lead buildup. A lot of the plants in those wetlands will take up elements that are in the water and the soil, and it becomes a part of the vegetation as well. And these animals would be swimming, drinking, eating in this land that's basically covered in lead. So they gave us a statistic. It said for a child to be lead poisoned, they need to have 0.05 parts per, what is that, milliliter, ppm of lead. And then what was it later? They talked about what these swans had. 52.4 0.42 parts per million. So for a swan. So for a child, 0.05 parts per million is lead poison. And then this statistic, the 52%, was the average one that was caught and surveyed. Those are living animals that are living with that much lead inside of them. So that is like a really alarming that people are like, oh yeah, okay, no, this is fine, everything's fine. And they're finding this much lead in the situation. But I think another big thing is that a trumpeter swan is pretty much at all the zoos ever. Like, I could totally be wrong. There are lots of zoos without trumpeter swans, I'm sure. But so many people don't know their story, their history, that their numbers actually are still pretty low, and that we're, like, as a society, actively harming them. So I think that it's a pretty big story. And then a good reminder for me was that we are here to advocate for these species that we have. We're here to kind of speak on their behalf and really try and get the message out to the public. And if there's a species like this that we see all the time that we think is just so commonplace, and we don't realize that there are issues that obviously affect a number of species. Lead poisoning is by no means just affecting trumpeter swans. But if you are to bring in a message of lead poisoning, you can apply it to all of these other species. So if you're talking about a raptor that has been affected by lead poisoning, you can say, even if you're not very interested, maybe you're talking about a turkey vulture and this person's like, ew, turkey vultures are gross, I don't like those. But this trumpeter swan's adorable. Like, any way you can kind of, you know, get these things to get across to people, because that is a big thing that I don't see a ton of. I think that people, keepers, honestly myself included, it's kind of awkward to be like, hey, everything sucks, make it better, these animals are cute. Like, that's really a kind of a difficult thing to do. And so another, not to just be like, here's the entire magazine, but another article is basically on engaging, gosh darn it, zookeepers and guests with wildlife bird conservation. I didn't read this one as closely. I do like birds and things, but there are just lots of birds going on in here. But it's just like a big reminder that citizen science is certainly something that can happen. If people are interested in these animals, kind of reminding them that the goal of the zoo is conservation of the ecosystem, conservation of the species, and so they can maybe do their part. If they know that they can do a part, a lot of people are really excited about that. Every time I brought up citizen science to a citizen, they were super excited. And maybe I just like strategically chose my suspects. But I was pretty excited about letting them know about this, and the fact that there are apps on your phone for things like eBird. Monarch SOS is something that you can get for your phone if you see monarch butterflies flying through. There are a lot of just like local things that you can do to be involved in citizen science and community outreach. We are having a bio blitz, or maybe we had, I'm a bad community member, we had a bio blitz, I think, in Saratoga Park. And I think that that might be something that would be kind of fun for our AAZK chapter to take part in down the line. If people don't know, bio blitz is basically like a big day for birding. You just kind of go out and find as many birds as you can. BioBlitz is that, but for anything. So like bugs, lizards, bunnies, trees, you know, like literally everything. And I think that that would be something really cool. It would get a bunch of us together, but also it would help us all learn, because we all are submersed in nature all the time. So if we knew what these things are that are around us, it could also help us when we have like noxious plants growing, if you need to collect browse, if you need to not like end up with your skin stinging because you put it in stinging nettle. Those are all valuable lessons to learn that we could learn from BioBlitz. But knowing that those are things that we can do just as regular people, everybody can do them. Obviously, zookeepers can do them, but not only should we do them, I mean, should is an operative word. It's your own prerogative, but encouraging people to kind of get involved and do a little bit more is what we're really here for. And a lot of it does kind of get forgotten about because we're so excited about what's going on with the animals, and we love our animals and we love enriching them and doing all this stuff. And maybe talking to guests is not the most fun thing in the world, especially if you don't have the best guests in the world. But that is in essence why we signed up for the job too. So it's a big part, and we have a really, really awesome speaker on Wednesday, Rachel Ross. So she was 2018's one of 2018's AZA's Wildlife Heroes, and so she's an educator at the Topeka Zoo, and she will be talking to us about how to become better educators, even if you barely talk to people often, or even if like you don't get a lot of face-to-face time, maybe you're interviewed quite often. She has a lot of really good tips for that. She's really good at helping you speak eloquently in general. She kind of gives a good step-by-step on putting together a story of an animal. If you're going to talk to a young group of kids, like older adults, you know, she kind of gives different examples. So if that's something that you're interested in too, I know a lot of us are not super outreach oriented necessarily, but it's something that can be applicable all the time. Even if you just have like a regular keeper chat, even if you're doing like a Zoom meeting with like a class, because I know that that's something I think you guys are doing at Roosevelt Park Zoo. I think I saw you guys are charging for it, which is kind of cool. We don't. We just do it for free. Sometimes people are really nice and they ask.
Yeah, they were doing them in person for quite a while, and then they just started doing it virtually now. They've also been doing some classes with, we had a grant for visiting all the first grade classes in Minot, so they've been doing that. And with COVID, they just send the supplies over, and then they do it via webcam where they instruct them, but they also have a different camera on some of the outreach animals, like playing, like the ferrets playing around in the pen or things like that. So yeah.
Cute, cute, cute. All right. We're coming up pretty close here. Jen is going to be our presenter. I thought maybe I would hand it over to you and then you could, oh, hold on. Oh, okay. Katie from Zoo Montana. We do zoo programs for free also through Skype in the classroom, but we're offering longer personalized programs for a fee. I see. No one has taken us up on it. Well, what you gonna do? But yeah, I will hand this over to Jen, and then you can maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. Are we? Yeah, sorry. You're muted also. I don't know if you know. Make presenter.
How about now? Nope, that's not going to help.
I heard you when you talked. Maybe not. Good. Is there a specific one that I should be clicking on? Because it looks like there's two options. Oh, I'm gonna hit this button.
This conference will now be recorded.
Another do for me is to really drive announcements with your critters. Try to include them as much as you can. This really incorporates that empathy factor that all of us are working on with the Woodland Park Zoo. If you've been involved in the ACE network at all, they're really working on driving that empathy talking point. But you guys do this all naturally, and so you're doing a great job. But I really think incorporating your critters in something that's happening in everyday life is a really big deal. We used that to build anticipation for our new sloth that's here. Her name is Helen. She's not on view for the public just yet, but the public does know she's here, which is unusual for us. We don't usually announce an animal before the public can see her or before they're out of quarantine. But we felt like people are really accustomed to this quarantine word now. And so we kind of jumped in with both feet. We announced that she was coming the same week that she arrived. And so that was a big deal. But this was part of the announcement for us, is that we're doing a sloth spaghetti dinner on Sloth Day on the 20th. And so we had other critters enjoying spaghetti. Of course, it was already approved on the enrichment list and all that jazz. But the people on Facebook really enjoyed being a part of that announcement, and this just kind of built up to that point. So look for opportunities to do something like that. Another celebrating in successes, I really enjoy sharing gratitude on social media. There were a lot of volunteer shout outs on everybody's Facebook pages when I went exploring. That's a really big deal, and I think the community really connects with that. It's an important part. It's a good job. Everybody really did that. And also be creative. This was my favorite in that category. Red River Zoo did a pose like your pack contest, and this was the winners of that contest. I think it's adorable. So look for ways to be creative in your social media as well. I'm trying to do kind of an inverted pyramid in this, which we'll talk about later as well, but the most important stuff first, so that if everybody wants to go enjoy their beer later, I don't care if you miss the end stuff. The important stuff is at the top, I promise. So tools, if you'd learn nothing else from tonight, these are my most used apps on my phone. From top to bottom, these are the ones that I use all the time. Those Fonto and Video Shop, those are the ones that I use to put my logo on the corner of every photo that I make. And I think that that's a big deal on your Facebook page. I didn't used to, and then we had an enrichment video from the red panda habitat. It was I'm trying to use my words because you can't see me, not that that would help you gather that I'm trying to describe a water container, but you know those blue water cooler critters? We put some yellow like Nerf balls in there and then mixed them around with grapes, and the red pandas would roll that water cooler on a PVC pipe and they'd be able to get those grapes out. See, I described them well enough for a few. That particular video went viral per se. A lot of people picked up on that. The Red Panda Network picked up on it, and so they started sharing it. And so it was going everywhere, and there was no way to identify that it was our video. And so that's when I decided that it was important to start adding my logo to everything, because you don't know what's going to go viral. Currently, we have a white-handed gibbon video from Cassie's birthday. My primate keepers are grinning over here. From Cassie's birthday, there's nothing really particularly dramatic about the video. They just have their cake, and Cassie comes down from her rope and she grabs the sweet potato candle off the top and just moves herself out of the video again. For some reason, somebody in India latched onto that, and it has 6 million views right now. This is news to Caitlin. But that's a big reason why you need your logo on those videos, because there's no way to know which ones are going to go viral first. The other ones on that page, so Diptych will lace together a bunch of still shots for you. Well, that split videos will lace together videos for you. Canva, you can also use canva.com. I use that quite a bit for any kind of posters or any way to get the word out there. WordSwag is new to me, but that one, it kind of fades out the photo and puts a quote on the top of it. I think there's good use for it, but that one's fairly new to me, but also free, and I'm excited to use it. So wanted to share those with you. So now we'll get to some principles, some rules of the road here. So in general, social media. I do be sure to, so this claim line is pertaining to changing the hours mostly. So spring and fall, we change our hours often. So I claim my page on Google, Yelp, Facebook, my website, and then my digital sign out front for the drive-by traffic. The reason I'm including it in this social media presentation is make sure that you're updating your hours on all of these spots. People look in different places, and so those are all important to have up to date. In all social media, use those hashtags, even if you feel silly, and use emojis. If you use those things, their algorithms will push your content further. So even if it feels silly, it's important to use. Links, they tend to cut off your circulation. If you share a YouTube link on Facebook, Facebook will recognize that as you use YouTube more than Facebook, and they'll cut you off. So be aware of that and share videos specifically on Facebook as often as you can, or whatever social media site you're using. Photo tags, because I will make that a thing later as well. So I have principles specific to Facebook. I use Facebook the most. I have the most likes on Facebook, and so I cater to that audience more. Some Instagram may work better. I know in some different states, and it's not really in North Dakota, but some different states, Twitter works better. My husband only watches YouTube, and he gets upset if I don't share the same video on YouTube as I did on Facebook from the zoo. So just kind of know your audience, but for me, my audience is mostly on Facebook, and so I know the most rules for that one. So I know that 3-minute videos make it accessible for your Facebook to put ads on it. It's not that you're going to benefit from those ads, but they are able to benefit from the ads. Therefore, Facebook will distribute it more. They'll reach more people with it. I forgot my exact ratio on this, 7 likes in 2 minutes, but something really close to that. I'm pretty sure it's 7 likes in 2 minutes. We learned that at just a recent gathering of the CVB in Minot, and the principle's the same, whatever the numbers are. A lot of early likes are going to make the Facebook algorithm push it out further, so that's important. Facebook Lives do get more distribution also. That does set you up for a little bit of unusual activity with whoever your talent is in front of the camera. Hashtag fresh camels, and we'll show you that in a minute. Events do get more circulation, but we noticed with the Minot Park District, they actually had an event kind of be captured by a hacker. They had just hosted a pumpkin walk, and someone copied the event and kind of they were selling tickets for a false event is what it was essentially. So yes, events get more circulation, so definitely put your events out there, but they can be susceptible to hacking, so be sure to keep a close eye on them. Also, in your positive reviews, make sure that you give them a reaction. A heart is worth more than a like, but if you react to your positive reviews, they'll make those go to the top. Facebook will make them go to the top, and so it's important to acknowledge that you have a positive review. And then in shares, and I'm struggling with this one as well, so if anybody has any input on that, it's good to share international conservation work and things like that, things that support our mission, but to share a post actually doesn't get as much distribution for yourself. It can kind of hurt your distribution. So I'm struggling with that because one of my goals this year is to share a little bit more mission-related items, but this makes it difficult. Oh, hashtag fresh camels, because I was going to show you this, and I'm going to because it's fabulous. Oh, except that it's playing live news. That's garbage. Oh, this is cool. If anybody's on from Chihinkapa, I loved your TikTok channel until I gave up on TikTok, but you guys are fabulous. Good job for taking it on. Okay. Sorry, CNN. We're going to find this one. This is our, oh, are you kidding me? Why? Oh, Facebook hates me, so I'll share it via Taylor later on. I'm sorry. Fine. We'll just keep going. I'll share it on the Facebook page later. #FreshCamels. Okay. Keep going with the principles. So I told you that I was from a broadcast background. So here are some principles that just come from that area of my life. So know your story. Find your angle in your story. So don't share that. Okay, back up. Hold on. Pause. So we have a lot of construction happening at Roosevelt Park Zoo right now. We are repaving the entire zoo. This one to your far right, we have the shade structure coming down at Red Panda. We also put together a pergola at Red Panda. And then to your far left, we put in bricks at our tiger habitat. So we had a lot of construction going on. And I could have used that as my angle on Facebook. But don't do that. Find a positive angle. Find your angle to promote these cool pictures. So instead, we talked about thanks for your commitment to buying these personalized bricks for the tiger, and these are going in now. And we have this awesome pavement going in, and the train ride is going to be so much smoother. I think with the Minot Park District logo one, I said every time this logo shows up, something good happens. So, use it as an opportunity to give a shout out to the people who are helping you make your place beautiful. Also related to your story, this has more to do with PSAs, I suppose, than Facebook, but make sure you use that inverted pyramid where the most, kind of what I said about this presentation too, right? So I wanted to tell you the very important stuff first before you left to drink your beer. So if you left a detailed background, well, if you don't get the background information, it's not a huge deal. So make sure you get that good stuff out first. And then pertaining to photography and principles from broadcast, make sure you get on people's level. Your best photos are going to be the ones that are crouched down and getting the angles of the people that are in, or the animals that are in your photo. So this one was my favorite one pertaining to that. I think it's adorable. Also remember your photo composition rules. So that little hashtag situation that comes up in your phone, it's there for a reason. Make sure that you are lining up your main subjects with those crossbars. That's how it appeals most to your eye. I don't know the rules, it's just science. So just work with it. Okay, so I don't have many do not rules, okay? There are actually only 3. I don't delete things, I don't apologize, and don't forget, because I had to have 3 and I just made this up. Don't forget, you're a professional, you are educated, and you are a zoo. So first ones that are most important. I don't delete things. If it invites an uncomfortable conversation, just go with it. A big example for that with us is our bear den. Our bear den was built in the 70s. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about our bear den. Always return with them acknowledging how they feel about that bear den. Thank them for noticing that is something that can be improved upon, and then highlight what you have improved. So for us, we've redone a fire hose hammock, and we have different substrates, different sandboxes, things that they can take some pressure off their joints. Our keepers have really upped the enrichment in that area, and I always try to highlight that. Just there are things that they are not aware of on the surface that sometimes that's all it takes, is to remind them that those things are taking place. I don't delete the criticism on that bear den. I just tell them what we're doing differently, and then why we haven't changed it. And I guess I didn't get to the why with you guys. The reason we have not changed our bear den is it's the closest habitat to one of the closest habitats to our Mouse River. The city as a whole is taking on a protection plan with the river, and our bear den happens to be clipped by that protection plan. So it's just not a solid investment for us at this time, and that's the reason why we've skipped over the improvements there. We're making improvements elsewhere that are a little more solid investment. But don't just delete the post. Take the opportunity to have the conversation. Number 2, I don't apologize. I am a North Dakota girl at heart. I apologize for everything. Don't do that. It's okay. It's okay to defend what you have. Again, with that bear story, or today, I was in tears over Boo at the zoo. You have to choose what you do and defend it. There's no reason to apologize for the construction happening. Spin it. Instead of apologizing, spin it. Find your angle. And then my don't forget addition that I had. Don't forget that you're a professional. Don't criticize anybody, any entity in your community or your keepers. These are all super easy. So these are just, normal etiquette on Facebook. Also remember that it's okay to take a minute or two to reply. Gather yourself. I definitely had to on Boo at the Zoo today. Take a minute to give yourself a moment to be collected enough to reply. Remember that you're an educated individual. Back in the day, your middle school English teacher would have told you that first annual is not a thing. Please don't use the word first annual. You can have inaugural if you want, but annual does not happen until the second one. Also, this is kind of a broadcast flashback also. Don't say welcome back because your viewers didn't go anywhere. They were waiting for you. So don't say welcome back. Say we're back instead or whatever. Also remember that you're a zoo, so don't waste a whole bunch of time on graphics because you have awesome pictures of critters like this. So use these photos as much as you can and don't use up your time on graphics. So here's my do list. We're going to come back to that. We're going to do rules first. Okay, so there are a few things on my do list that you're going to have to know what your institution's stance is on these things. I'm the marketing person. I have zero, I can't make these rules, right? So these are discussions that have to happen outside of when the instance comes up. So know when to delete your posts, because of course there are exceptions to every rule. So I said I don't delete things, right? But if there is profanity, I do remind them that this is a family institution and those particular cuss words are removed. I do also remove past dates. So if there's any posters out there or anything, I don't want last year's Boo at the Zoo date to come back and haunt me. So I do take that down. Know what your institution's rules are about behind the scenes. I choose not to post anything that has fencing in front of the animal. It's not because I'm opposed to fencing, because that's the public view, right? It's just because most people can't get the fenceless view. So that's what I have to offer is the fenceless photo. So just know what your rules are for behind the scenes. Another thing that differs from institution to institution is how you credit photos. We do hire a photographer every year. We give them $1,000 for the full year. And then we have all the rights to those photos that she takes within that year. And we can sell them in the gift shop. We can use them to reprint on canvases. I can use them in presentations like this. So know where that photo credit line is. Because we have that contract in place, I don't use specific names. Like this photo was contributed by Tyler. I don't do that simply because I try to make our Facebook page come from one voice. Yeah, so I try not to split hairs a whole lot with photo credit. When I do acknowledge a person in the photo, I say their title and their first name. I don't hand out last names. That's just a choice that we've made within our institution and the way that I see things. So either I say Keeper Caitlin or GMZS Rex, just so that they know which entity that person comes from within that photo. Also, make sure that you double check with the animal names. That differs from place to place. We do have, I know you guys were talking a little about the ACE project or the empathy project and a little bit about the grants that we received, probably more pertaining to the outreach projects, and that we were able to give every first grade class a free outreach this year. We had a second grant from that, in that we were able to print background signs of almost all of our animals with their names on them, and gives a personal biography of the animals in our zoo, which is different. That was a big conversation at the ACE conference in February in Seattle. We talked a lot about whether or not that was the right thing to do. And we've shared names for a long time here. A lot of our guests, our members, really know the animals' names already. And so we thought it was kind of a fun thing to share. And so when it comes to Facebook, I do use animal names. It hasn't really been an issue at all. I know that there's a significant conversation with that word, and empathy. And my defining characteristic in all of that is animal choice. If the animal's doing it by choice, then there's a way that we can spin it to pertain to our Facebook guests. We talked about staff names already, and then shares. We kind of talked about that already too. And like I said, I'm looking for, if anybody has any information about sharing. I would like to promote a little more conservation-related, mission-related items. So if anybody has any insight on that, I am up for it. So this is my do list. Most of this we've talked about a little bit already. Take a screenshot of it. This is just me writing things as I'm sitting by my notebook. Big things on here. I do believe in having one voice in social media. I do believe in all posts going through one person. That way you're just consistent in the things that are presented. That one person is really looking for what fencing is being shown and what wall is being shown, and all of those silly things that are behind the scenes that you don't really, it doesn't matter on the surface, but if you present it as one voice, then it matters a little better. I do believe in having many characters, giving credit where it's due, having those volunteers get credit, having our keepers get credit, talking a lot about what our keepers do during the day. I believe in all of that. I think developing characters, like in a story, is an important part of being on social media. Be grateful, collaborate. I do make a point of using my logo in my profile picture at all times. I would recommend that if you don't have your logo in your profile picture. And then, I'm sure you guys know this already, but babies, birthdays, and goodbyes, those are the ones that are going to get the most activity every single time. I think that's kind of all I have to chat about. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to figure out my camera while you guys ask. Maybe.
By this time, you don't need like being shipped off, right?
Oh, I'm not going to be able to hear most of you, I bet.
Which, yeah.
And if you think of any, you know where to find me. I'll be watching this event page, and then just find me on our Roosevelt Park Zoo page if you need to as well.
I don't know if you can see the chat box. We have a question. Have you noticed trends about the best times to post?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I don't have any solid background for the reason why I believe this way, but I do post at 10 a.m. and at 1 and at like 7:30 p.m. And my reason for that is because those are the times that I'm attracted to my phone and just start scrolling randomly. And so if there's a giant picture of an okapi, that's when I'm going to stop. But I don't have any numbers to back that up. Those are nap times.
Yeah, like my kids always took a nap at 10. And
Oh,
like
that's
2.
oh, there you go. Those are nap times for kids, says Brandy.
Yeah.
Therefore, that's when moms are scrolling.
Like I'd be like,
Look at that.
when you fell asleep, yeah, get to scroll through your phone, get that baby to bed.
All right.
I think mine's just
Nobody else has a question. We'll probably call it an evening. We put that this could go till later. We were kind of just being fluid with what's happening. So I say that that's a pretty fair end to this evening. We're going to be doing it all again tomorrow, obviously with different topics. So PJ Bevins has spoken. Taylor, do you know if I'm saying her name right? Is it Bevins? Bevins? She's great, honestly. She really is. She has cool content. Last time she kind of spoke about how like people are related to the animal kingdom as far as health goes. That's basic general overview. Today, or tomorrow rather, she is going to talk about Zoo Fit and a little bit about how you can be more fit in your everyday life, as well as be more fit in taking action in conservation, a little bit kind of tying into what I talked about today, perhaps. I haven't actually heard her do this talk yet, so I'm just kind of basing it off of what she has told me about it. So that's going to be a little bit tomorrow, and then what else is tomorrow? Taylor, do you know? Here we go. Enrichment. Oh yeah.
Tyler's
Yeah.
enrichable.
Yeah, enriching the unenrichable. So Tyler's going to give us a little bit of a lowdown, like Jen was saying. They have upped their game in the bear enrichment world, which is really cool. A few of the things that I saw there, we kind of took on in the primate center here at our zoo, the little reaching arms, and we are trying to do sand pits more now too, because we saw those being utilized there and think that that's really cool. And so want to hear more about how your thought process was with that, and if you have any questions on enrichment, on specific animals with enrichment, come prepared with questions. We have time to talk about that stuff, but that'll be tomorrow, along with, we will probably do a giveaway drawing tomorrow or two, and then that will be the things. We'll talk about building blocks for the chapter, and we'll carry on with day 2 of our 3-day conference.